Well, happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm so thankful you've joined me for today's devotion. We are in the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 3. And while you're opening there, I want to ask you to be praying because next week on 3 different evenings, our church is going to be hosting the baccalaureate service for each of the 3 high schools in our Rock Hill School District. And this is on behalf of the United Christian Baccalaureate Planning Committee. We're the host church, host site for those. And just be praying. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to care for and love on families and graduates from our 3 high schools here at First Baptist. So will you be praying for each of those services? Services on Sunday night, I believe, is for Northwestern. Wednesday night for Rock Hill High, and don't hold me to this, I believe it's Tuesday night. It could be Monday, I forget, for South Point. So all 3 baccalaureates here, you be praying for God to do a great work in those baccalaureate services. All right, today, 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, the focus in this brief chapter, it's just 13 verses, is Paul's concern for the spiritual health, the faith of the Thessalonian believers. They're staying true to the gospel and true to Jesus in the midst of their suffering, in the midst of their persecution and opposition they face there in their home city of Thessalonica. And after Paul and his team had started this church and got it established, they are missionaries, planting new churches in different cities. And so they move on from Thessalonica to Athens, and you can read about that in Acts chapter 17. And while they're in Athens, Paul becomes concerned about the spiritual health of the believers back in Thessalonica. And so he sends Timothy, one of his associates in ministry, to check on these Thessalonian believers. So look at chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, where he says, "Therefore, when we could endure it no longer, he says, I just couldn't go any longer without knowing how you're doing. We thought it best to be left behind at Athens alone, and we sent Timothy." So basically he's saying we thought it's better that we go ahead and stay here in Athens, but let's send Timothy back. We sent Timothy, our brother and God's fellow worker in the gospel of Christ, to strengthen and encourage you as to your faith. So we sent Timothy. We stayed here alone, but we sent Timothy back to you to help you spiritually and to teach and encourage and build up your faith. Verse 3, so that no one would be disturbed by these afflictions. We wanted Timothy to encourage you because we just were concerned. We didn't want you to get discouraged or lose faith because of your persecution, your afflictions. For you yourselves, the end of verse 3, you yourselves know that we have been destined for this. Now notice that. Paul says as believers we are destined to face opposition. At times hostility or persecution. Now think about that. Paul says it is the destiny of the church, it is the destiny of believers that there will be people who oppose you being a follower of Jesus, who oppose you believing the truth of the Word of God. So don't be surprised when it happens. Verse 5. For this reason, when I could endure it no longer, I also sent to find out about your faith. Kind of repeating what he'd already said. For fear that the tempter might have tempted you and our labor would be in vain. In other words, what he's saying is Satan uses opposition, mockery, etc., to tempt you to give up on Jesus. He's the one who is behind it. Think about that. So he said we're destined for opposition. Satan uses it, but look at verse 4. Look at verse 4. He says, "For indeed, when we were with you," when Paul says, when I was there starting the church and then getting the church going, when I was with you, we kept telling you in advance that we were going to suffer affliction. Well, guess what? It came to pass, as you know. So the idea that there will not be opposition to the Christian faith is unbiblical. There will be. Now, here in America, we have been blessed for so long, in part because our nation, more than any other on the planet, has enshrined religious liberty both in our Constitution and in our culture, in our heritage, our DNA. And so that's been a real gift and blessing, religious liberty. It's also true that historically, to varying degrees, there has been a respect for and appreciation for Christianity in our American culture, and it has helped shape some of our culture. But that is changing, as you know. And it's not simply that our culture is becoming less respective of or appreciative of Christianity and its positive impact on the culture. It's also that there is a lessening understanding of what religious liberty really means, both among some secular people and even some in the church. Baptists have always been at the forefront of the teaching and the leadership when it comes to religious liberty. But I'm afraid that so many in our Baptist churches today do not understand the true meaning of religious liberty. Because some of us want liberty for ourselves, but not others. And if you don't have liberty for everybody, you do not have religious liberty. And I would urge you to listen less to some of the modern speakers and listen more to what some of our Baptist forefathers said about religious liberty. The other issue is that the opposition to Christianity today that often puts pressure on us and our faith is very intentional. And the epicenter, quite often, of that opposition, that intentional opposition to the faith, to Christianity, is found in academic circles and in the entertainment industry. It is the goal of many professors. Some have stated this in writing. They've said it. It is the intentional goal of many in academia, not just a few, but many in academia, to do everything they can to weaken the faith of our children that we send to many secular universities. That's just a fact. And it is the goal of many in the entertainment industry. Now, some of them are sneaky and won't tell you that, but that's exactly what they're doing. And it's having a negative, damaging impact on our culture in so many ways, as well as on the health and well-being of families and on the faith, unfortunately, of many of our young people who grow up and then become young adults. So what are we supposed to do? Stand firm in the faith, be evangelistic and share the gospel, and make disciples. You see, I'm going to be honest with you here. For too long in our churches, we have done a better job of making church people than we have of making disciples. And there was a time when the culture was more homogeneous and Christianity was more the accepted thing, that being a church person worked pretty good. But our young people today face so much that being just a church person doesn't help them at all. We have to help them know what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. And mom and dads, listen to me. If you don't know what it really means to be a disciple of Jesus, if you are more of a church person than a true disciple of Jesus, you are limited in how much you can help your kids. And so one of the greatest things you can do for your kids is to become a real, true, devoted, growing, changed disciple of Jesus Christ. And that is not only what your kids need, that is what this culture needs today. Well, that's my sermon for today. I hope you listen. I'll see you tomorrow as we look at chapter 4. God bless you, everybody.